Hello and welcome to the KOFISI Connect podcast, your source for a wealth of roundtable discussions on the workplace and business, as well as cultural news and trends from the diverse and dynamic continent of Africa. I'm your host, Richard Okenye, and this month, being Wellness Month at KOFISI, I'm very pleased to introduce to you Freeman White, Executive Leadership Coach, and Anja, coach, consultant, mentor, and much more, who's here with us ahead of her masterclass and coaching happening with the Institute of Small Businesses Initiative. And we're going to discuss well-being at the workplace. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me here on KOFISI Connect.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. Freeman, I've seen you before today. So how have you been?
Thank you. I've been well. We've been connected ever since the workshop I gave a little while back on adaptive leadership. And since then, I've been leading similar workshops and working with mostly high-growth startups in Kenya.
Right. I'm getting a second free masterclass from you.
Yes, today.
Do you feel cheated?
Today, exactly.
Yeah, do you feel cheated?
No. You should enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure I'll make it to Anja's coaching and masterclass, but glad to have you here.
You should try to come.
Yeah, I will. I'll try. How's it been for you in Kenya so far?
Great, absolutely great. Yeah, I haven't been here before, and it's a great experience until now. I've seen a lot yesterday, doing a guided tour through the city center, and today we visited a school already and had lunch, and now I'm here. So many impressions, and take a lot of time to reflect on it and really,
Right.
Yeah.
Great to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy much more of Kenya.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Right. Could you, to begin with, Freeman, could you each please share what brought you into leadership, coaching, and organizational development, and why is it that you still keep doing it? Is it, that exciting?
For sure. It is incredibly exciting work. Yeah. I fell into it through just loving the one-on-one conversations I was having with the people on my team. And I've been working in software and product management for the last 15 years. And what I found was that the conversations I was having in my one-on-ones with the people on my team were really coaching conversations. And I started to just fall in love with the honesty and how important those one-on-one conversations are and how important they were in my management approach. And so that honesty, I think, has been the thing that keeps bringing me back to coaching. And the thing that keeps me going is really just being inspired by my clients, seeing what they achieve, seeing what they see for themselves, and honestly what they can't even see for themselves. But I can glimpse where the conversation is going to go, and I can see what's possible for them. And those moments of insight, when they then go from not being able to see it for themselves to being able to see it for themselves, are absolutely stunning moments. And I've fallen in love with those moments. And so that's what keeps me going.
All right.
Yeah.
That's before and after.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anja, is it the same for you?
It's quite similar, actually. So I don't have a very linear career. So I worked for startups, and I worked for universities in the academic context, in the research, also in corporate environments. I also had a leadership position there. And I worked in HR and knowledge management, so very different fields, actually. And what I always found out that, as you said, you're doing coaching conversations within the company, not knowing that it's coaching. And then I did this coaching education and also mediation. And I learned that I maybe have a good sense, a good feeling for people, emotions, but also structure. And I think this is a good combination to look at topics in the companies from a structural point of view, as well as from this emotional point of view, or on the view of needs of the people. And if you can combine it and you have just a good feeling for the situation and you ask the right questions, this is what makes coaching and consulting a real difference to before. Yeah.
Does every organization need some sort of coaching or a level of that structure, having a look, or having someone who's a professional like you having a look at it?
I wouldn't say every organization, but if there's a bigger organization with like 100, 200 people, I would say yes, there are probably some who could need like a coaching or a team coaching, because it depends on if it's a really one-on-one leadership coaching you're working on, or if it's just more kind of team workshop. And this is what I think every company would need, because you're talking about how you cooperate, how you communicate, how you want to work together. So this is needed, and maybe it's not called coaching, but it's just more like facilitating a workshop or so. But this is what needed by every company, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, Freeman, are there maybe, if there's organizations who think maybe we're already too successful, how's that in their case? Is the success what measures where they need coaching or?
What's amazing is you see even some, let's take the definition of success like athletics. You see some outrageously talented athletes, tennis stars, take for example. They will have a coach to be able to even sustain that level of performance, to be able to even get through the dark moments when they doubt themselves, to even get over the next hurdle, whatever that is for them, even at the highest levels of performance. And so extrapolate that to a company. A highly successful company still has another level. They just haven't gone there yet. And the people in that company have another level. And so to either get through the moments of self-doubt, to get through the moments when things maybe stumble, that's where a coach can help.
Right. Very fast-paced workplaces we operate in these days. KOFISI being one of them, I'll tell you for sure. I've had a crazy day so far. But there's need for moments of reflection in terms of leadership, organizational culture, and all of these safe, reflective spaces. Why do you think it's important, and how does it tie into wellness? Freeman, Anja?
Yeah, sure.
I can start and I add my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there are a few messages that I want to remember from myself, and a lot of them I write down and I put them on Post-it notes on my monitor. And one of them is a quote by John Dewey, an American philosopher, and he says, "We do not learn from experience, but we learn from reflecting on our experiences." And so if we learn from reflecting on experiences, and we're all learning every day, and there are really critical topics that are changing at a pace that we really haven't even seen in human history before, we have to have times for reflection. And so a coach can provide that. A coach can hold the space for the quiet moments in an otherwise very hectic day to look at what's most important and to give us that pause for reflection. And so I would say to have the talent and the leaders today that we need for the companies of tomorrow, I think that reflection is absolutely vital.
All right. Anja, you've had experience in culture and mediation.
Yeah.
How do we get to support wellness and performance?
Well, it's I asked before we came here, what do they think is the definition of wellness within a company? Because I think, a company never is like a spa or a wellness center or something like this, but it's about providing a healthy environment for the people. And this is also about reflection and slowing down maybe, and offering this space to do that. And because sometimes it feels like counterintuitive to slow down if you're in a rush. But if you once try it out and you start it, you find out that this focus is needed actually when you're in a hurry. So, but you have to learn this. And culture, is something that is learned and needs to be developed. That is nothing you step into a company and you say, okay, now you're really in a hurry and stressful, and maybe it's not in a healthy environment actually, so now we change it by this. So you have to really learn about the culture, how it's now, and then try to focus on a goal, and then think how you can develop in the company towards this direction. And maybe slowing down is one part of it, and finding these spaces.
Is individual well-being a quote that, we've been using this month at KOFISI for Wellness Month, has been from Plato himself. And maybe I could read it before I get to that other question. It says, "The part can never be well unless the whole is well," which is to say that tending to each individual part of yourself is important so that the whole can flourish. I'm imagining it on an organizational level. Is super individual wellness important for the whole organizational wellness?
Yes, I think it is, but I think the company is not responsible for everything and for the well-being of each individual, as a whole. I mean, you are responsible for yourself to articulate your needs, your thoughts, what you need to feel well within the company, but still you are, you're normally an adult person caring about yourself. So I think it's a mixture and it's a give and take from both sides. So the company provides a good framework probably, and maybe a good leadership style and a good leadership culture. But as an individual, you also have to care about yourself. And this is like the combination of the two.
Okay. As an individual, you still have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, of course. This is not the task of the company. Yeah. It's just a part of it. Yeah.
So, Freeman, you had that quote. Any feedback on that specific quote?
Yeah, the part in the whole, I agree with Anja that there's an individual responsibility, and it comes up in coaching even. For example, the coach is not responsible for that individual's well-being. Again, it's holding space for reflection. It is holding space for them to really think through important questions. But the coach has to have a certain level of like respectful distance. What Anja was saying, I think, about companies is similar. I think the manager has a responsibility to create a safe and psychologically safe environment that's conducive to people doing their best work. But I wouldn't say it's the manager's responsibility for that person's well-being necessarily. The individual does still have a responsibility to stand up for themselves, to state their needs, to be clear about what they want, to manage their own time, especially if the manager is providing enough flexibility and autonomy for that person to do their best work. And so I think in those respects, the balance between the whole and the part is very similar to what Anja was saying.
Yeah. Still, you have to pay attention to the needs of the employees, and you have to listen closely and actively and ask good questions. But you can't feel if you are leading like 20 people or 10 people in a team. You can't be, if you put everything on your shoulder, the whole responsibility. This is too much for a leader.
Puts me in a dilemma though. If I'm looking at it from the outside, looking in, random company, random organization, I'll definitely find one person who's thriving and they feel like everything is fine, there's spaces for reflection and all that, and there's definitely one other person who isn't. How would I, maybe start with Freeman again still, since you spoke of that psychological safety, how would I assess a healthy organizational culture? How would I be able to tell if I can't speak to individuals?
I think there's an incredibly strong connection between psychological safety and the wellness of an organization. Psychological safety is the bedrock on which people are then able to have creative thought. And without it, people are more stuck in their kind of fight or flight response, and it switches off the part of our brain that even allows for creativity. And so wellness is only possible if we're outside of that fight or flight moment. And so when we start to think about kind of diagnosing the whole or looking at the whole, there are some things you might look for. And so, for example, one really early warning sign, if you weren't able to diagnose each individual, but rather you're kind of looking at more systemic problems, if you start seeing problems come up late, like you're kind of realizing there's a problem and you're realizing it quite late, that can be a sign that people don't feel safe enough to raise a concern early. If someone doesn't feel safe enough to raise a concern early, then there is actually a responsibility on the manager to create a structure where the individuals can feel psychologically safe to raise their concerns about what might not be working earlier on. Therefore, larger problems are avoided much later. You could start to diagnose kind of the organization's health by things like employee engagement surveys that allow you to see like how engaged employees feel. Are they bringing their best selves to work? And those scores can help quantify things that are hard to measure on the individual basis. Likewise, you can just look at what's called regretted churn. Regretted churn is when employees that you wished you'd kept are leaving. And so in those moments, you can start to measure whether or not you're losing some of your best people. And there's different ways to measure that. I think in particular, does the team regret losing that person, not just the manager? That can be problematic, but does the team regret losing that person? And if so, then you have a really interesting measure of whether or not the organization's been healthy. So those are kind of three ways that I think organizations can keep a pulse on whether or not they have a healthy culture without necessarily having to diagnose each individual.
Right. Anja, just to pick up on that still, there's a pressure for productivity. You just mentioned fast-paced environments like KOFISI, where there's that need for productivity. You're taking care of a lot, but still, as a manager, as a leader, there's need to take care of individual team members. How do we strike the balance where we can create space for genuine well-being for the team, but also balancing out the need for outcome from the need to produce, to be productive?
I just add two things to what you said before, because I think there are some explicit signs, also like the sickness rate, when people are going on sick leave, because this is increasing normally if it's not a healthy environment, or also the burnout rate, and even the staff turnover. So you have it's similar to the engagement index, maybe you mentioned, but there are some very explicit things you can observe as a leader. Sorry, but I just wanted to mention this.
Well said.
Yeah. So how you could combine it? Do you mean the productivity and the
well-being,
striving for? Yeah. I think on the one hand you have to give clear directions and a clear framework as a leader or as a company. So you have to make clear the company goals, the expectations towards the employees. What is like a yearly goal or a monthly goal or whatever, so that I think people feel safe when they know what they should achieve. Because then you can also talk about it. Is it possible for you or not? Okay, then let's discuss it. But this framework must be quite clear. And on the other hand, it's this part of active listening and asking, about the needs of the people, and also having really the time for the dialogue between the leader and the team, and being open for feedback, because this is often the problem for the leaders. They think they know everything, but they really need to listen closely to their teams. And so it's on the one hand the clear framework, and also if somebody is not willing to support these goals, maybe it's not the right person for the company, because a company normally has like economic goals, and this is okay. So and you should support these goals. And if you manage to grow as a company and also help the people to grow themselves, this is the best combination you can have.
Right. An organization would ask, what does the well-being of the employees matter in the success of the company as a whole? What would be the answer to this?
The resource, the only one, most important.
Sometimes the answer is we can always replace you.
Yeah, this depends on the context, because I don't know how the situation in Kenya is. In Austria, we had the situation for the last years that we couldn't find enough qualified people. So you really had to find a way to keep and retain the people in the company. So it was really about retention, and it was about well-being and so on and so on. And this actually it was a huge topic, and some companies started, to offer we have 5 weeks of holiday in Austria, so they offered another week of holidays. They offered like spas and massage and healthy food and coffee and whatever. So more and more and more, just to get the people to join the company. So if the labor market is like the other way around, you have a different topic, because then it's, for the company in the first moment, maybe it seems easier to just exchange the people. But on the long run, this is not very effective, because it costs. Maybe some people don't know, if a person is leaving a company, this costs like an average yearly wage of this person. So depending on what the person is earning, so everything to find another person, the loss of productivity, the onboarding of the new person, and so on and so on. So if you calculate everything together, it's like an average yearly salary. So this is really a lot, and sometimes companies don't think about these costs.
About the costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's correct. How does then Freeman coaching one-to-one or in groups, as you do, how does it help organizations shift towards healthier cultures if they notice stuff like that, retention, sick leaves, and all this?
Yeah, the goal of coaching is to help especially a leader or a manager uncover what's blocking them from doing their best work. And simply put, a better manager leads to a better culture. And so if a company is willing to invest in keeping their people, as Anja was pointing out how valuable that is, then the relatively low cost of a few hours of someone's time to get through what is perhaps holding them back from being the type of manager that they really could be, and the type of manager who would inspire, the type of manager who would keep their best people, and everything that it would be incredibly valuable to the company as a result of that investment, then the coaching is absolutely worth it. And in those coaching conversations, a coach can help a manager, a leader, understand maybe what's holding them back from trusting their people, what's holding them back from empathizing with their people, what's holding them back even from potentially empathizing with their customers. And those are incredibly valuable conversations. And so the goals of a coaching relationship between a leader and a manager would be to help develop that trust and empathy and self-awareness, some of the kind of emotional intelligence that a lot of managers need to keep their best people. As Anja was pointing out, keeping the best people is such a valuable resource.
Yeah, Anja also did mention that it's a whole different ballgame in Austria.
Yeah.
You have to think about those how many weeks of holiday and all that. You've also worked in different cultures. Has that shaped a different approach to your leadership and wellness coaching?
Yeah, I mean, in short, yes. With a slightly longer answer, my most recent team had about 20 people on it, and we hailed from Kenya, Uganda, Portugal, Ghana, Nigeria, Canada/Poland, the UK/Tanzania, the UK/Zimbabwe, the Netherlands, Scotland, Zambia, and the United States. 20 people. Okay. And so an incredibly diverse group. And what I found in building that team was that we had to be aware of our ways of working on three really key dimensions. The first was deference to authority and how deep that goes in culture. The willingness to speak up and acknowledge hard things, which is also deeply rooted in culture. And our comfort with either questioning versus answering, which is often deeply rooted in the educational systems of each individual country. And so our approach to leadership, we have to hold space to at least acknowledge that we're each starting from different places on those three dimensions. And if we don't, we can just kind of glaze over or miss the fact that in one culture, deference to authority, meaning like how much respect do I have for the leader in the room? And am I even willing to speak up when there's a leader in the room? That is wildly different across those many cultures I just listed. Mm-hmm. And so we have to, as leaders, respect that. And in doing so, we start to make room for people to feel included. And if people start to feel included, then that's kind of the basis and foundation for wellness in the workplace.
Right. Feels like as a leader, I have to also confront some of my own personal biases, background to understand the kind of team I'm leading.
Yeah, coaching is that journey of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. I'm sure Anja's seen this in working with leaders. You start to find that person has their own perspective on what they think a leader should be. And sometimes they're trying to hold themselves to that standard, and they may not realize that they are blind to some things. And so coaching can help open up that self-awareness that is so important for them to examine their own cultural starting point.
Would you say that's the first step to being a good leader? Self-awareness?
I think it's about, because all the dimensions you mentioned before about the culture and the approach, for example, to authority, it's probably unconscious. You normally don't know if you don't talk about it and if you don't explore yourself. So this is, of course, the first step to explore yourself, to understand better where you are socialized, how you grew up, who your role models were, because it makes a difference. The culture makes a difference, and how you grew up, how your family was, and so on and so on. And I'm often working with leaders also just trying to draw their leadership journey. So, and then they find out, okay, there was this person in this company, really, I appreciate this person. So I try to be like him or her, or I had a bad experience. So I try not to be like this person, like a teacher in school, for example. So it doesn't have to be in a business context. So, and coaching helps to make it a bit more conscious. Sometimes you don't manage to make it really conscious, but to also dig deeper and find out about these unconscious cultural habits or whatever.
All right. So sort of all leaders should start with therapy.
There's a difference between therapy. I'm becoming a psychotherapist, so I know there's a difference between therapy and coaching.
Okay. Yeah, very big difference. Definitely still, but be aware. Yeah, for sure.
Even if I could just the one sentence version, because it is so important. Sometimes coaching is confused with therapy, even though we get into incredibly emotional and important topics in a very vulnerable and safe space. My simple definition is that therapy will work from a person's past to help them really understand their present and make sure that they're then able to move forward. Coaching starts a little closer to the current present and doesn't necessarily dive into everything in the person's past. We can touch on it briefly, but it doesn't go as deep into the past. And then we help them plan for the future. And so it's a little bit more from present to future in coaching. And very specifically, we don't try and diagnose psychological ailments, things like that. So there is a difference. what is incredibly similar, and why it is often described in the same breath as you just did, which is totally natural, by the way, is that we both deal with emotions. We both deal with the importance of how someone's feeling, what their thoughts are. And those are very vulnerable spaces. So they're both vulnerable spaces, but they have a slightly different methodology.
Okay. Big question before I shift to the last set of organizational well-being and well-being in the workplace in general. Can anyone become a leader? Is this something that you can coach into just anyone?
I mean, the first question is why does somebody like to become a leader? Because I observed sometimes that it's appreciated, maybe you earn more money, so it's very natural to say, okay, yes, of course I want to lead. But if they find out that leading is not just, the pink party time, but it's like also dealing with problems of the people. You have difficult phases in the company. You also have like high goals towards your boss and so on and so on. So it's not that easy actually. So the first thing I ask and I really try to find out is the motivation why somebody wants to become a leader. And if this is clear, I think you can work with a person, but I wouldn't say that everybody could become a real good leader in a sense of, integrative, charismatic, vision, with a good vision, a good strategy, and so on. So there are so many skills, and I don't think that everybody, will become a good leader in this sense. Yeah. You can support via coaching, of course, and you can do a lot and you can develop a lot, but sometimes it takes more time.
To just do it with anyone. Also, the why is important, I think.
For me, it's the motivation. Why does somebody want to become a leader? Is it just because it's in society, it's having power is like also powerful for you? Yeah. Or is it really like an intrinsic motivation because you really want to lead people and you work to you like to work with a team? So I ask this a lot before I start to work on leadership topics with people.
Great. Freeman, coaching directly, one-on-one groups, do you have an example or a story where this has improved directly the well-being of an organization?
Yeah. I was called into a high-growth startup based mostly here in Kenya and to coach the CEO and then also a number of folks in the product management team. And what I found was that when I walked in, there was a fair amount of tension between this team and some other teams in the company. And there were some basic things that people could start to do to focus not on kind of the problem, but rather on what they could control. And so in our coaching, we really dived into where do I have control in this very complex set of relationships that were leading to some tense circumstances across the company. And over about 6 months of work with the team and a few different members of the team, what we started to see was that when people focused on what they could control, and they started to really move with intention towards creating better ways of working, some of the tension started to release. There was better alignment between teams that previously had been pointing fingers at each other. Structures got put in place on a more regular cadence so that people were talking regularly whether it was needed or not, and so they weren't just talking when things were bad. They weren't just talking when they had something to complain about. And by building those relationships, it made it much easier to have consistent communication that built alignment. And so I would say in that particular example, it was really about, again, focusing on where do I have control and how can I influence ways of working that will then build systems for better alignment across the company. And so that came from coaching. And I would say that without a coach, they may have had a hard time building that kind of momentum.
Right. I know then I should have started with why I want to become a leader is because when I thought about well-being in the workplace, the only thing I've been thinking about is my individual well-being. It's, how happy am I? Am I well paid? Am I on time? Or are things working in my favor? But I understand from, your answers, there's the interdepartmental relationship, there's manager to, employee relationship. Should well-being coaching, leadership also extend beyond those who don't really think about leadership? Maybe just general well-being, team versus team. Is it something that, maybe organizations should think about?
I'm not sure if I got the question. So if it should be offered to everybody in the company.
Yeah. Such that well-being isn't something I think about as an individual, whether I'm happy or not. It's more of, general well-being of everyone else that I get to interact with. Or rather than it being, leaders taking care of team, it's team taking care of team.
Yeah. At least in Austria, it's offered to lots of teams actually, and also coaching is not primarily for leaders. So it's really offered also for team members. So sometimes I work with leaders, sometimes I work with team members. And I think somehow if you train the leaders also to become or to use coaching methodology in the dialogues they have with the team, it's also worth. So in this sense you can, or you should, offer it for everybody.
Right. Do you have a direct example yourself, just like Freeman?
Where it helped? There was one, I was called for a workshop and they told me, I always ask, okay, what's the matter and what would you like to achieve at the workshop and so on. And they said, we just want to focus on our strategy and talk about the strategy and how to operationalize it. So difficult word. And I was called there and I worked with the team. And in the morning, suddenly really strong conflicts surfaced. And of course, it's not possible to work on a strategy if there's such a big conflict in the room. So you have to address it, and that's what I actually did then. And I worked with a leader in the afternoon or in the evening in a one-on-one session, and then we decided on how to work with the team. And actually, we used the whole second and third day to talk about this conflict and why it evolved and how it evolved and how it could, about the needs and how it could be resolved and so on and so on. And then we worked on this and not at all on the strategy. And then I worked with this company, with this team for some months. And what they learned, they still had conflicts, but they knew how to deal with it and how to talk about it. So they had a very good interaction with the conflicts in a way. So that's what they learned probably from this coaching.
All right. You did mention already red flags. I think I'll take this back to Freeman. I believe you mentioned, take a look at how many sick leaves people are taking, how many complaints you're receiving. Are there any more red
but
flags?
This is just the explicit part. So I think there's lots of implicit things going on because if people disengage, it's like a quiet quitting. So they are maybe not complaining, but they are not really engaged in working, and they are not adding their ideas, and they are not speaking up, and they are just getting they hide themselves somehow. And you have to be very attentive to these quiet quitting signs of the employees. Yeah. So the other thing is explicit ones, but these are also very important to address.
All right, Freeman, any explicit, implicit?
No, I think I mostly covered the ones that were top of mind before when we were talking about red flags. I would just say that the things that are hard to measure about culture and when it's starting to go sour are things you can almost feel, and it's very hard to necessarily name them, but you can walk into the room and you can kind of tell there's a seething problem that has nothing to do with a strategy workshop, and it's the only thing we're actually going to be talking about.
Wrong.
Right, exactly. You can almost tell when you're in the room that there's something going on. And if leaders are sensitive to that, if anyone is sensitive to that, they can kind of tell without any necessary instrumentation or measurement. And so it is hard to quantify. Organizations, especially large ones, love to quantify these things. And so sometimes that might be a signal that, hey, all right, let's try and quantify it. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it's time to do an engagement survey, or maybe it's time to do some polling of our people and gauge sentiment of the organization right now. So, but very often it's, you know it when you feel it.
Yeah.
It's also maybe a sign. For example, I just thought about one other sign. If people are joining a team and they are leaving very fast, like after 1 or 2 months, they are quitting again. So this is also a sign that there's something wrong, and you can observe this and you can even measure it. So if you're attentive, you should be able to observe some explicit signs in the company and in teams. It's not, sometimes it's not the whole company, because you have a company culture, but you also have very strong team cultures, and they can be very different to the company culture.
All right. Yeah. Team culture could be different to company culture.
Can be very different.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I'll give a very funny example in my head. It's okay if you guys don't laugh. You already laughed, so that's a step. So sometimes wellness becomes something as like a footnote, in organizations. I will say, to an extent, how sometimes we see sustainability happening in organizations these days. Now that we're speaking of, green tech, climate, and all that, it's at the end of, we are this and this, and we are sustainable. This is a great company. We do this. This is productivity. This is our success. We also care about your well-being. And when you look at the specific examples of well-being or what has been put in place as well-being, is really laughable. So great teamwork today. Let's have pizza. Let's meet next quarter and look at your KPIs. Or, here is one day of a team building session somewhere, and you come back and you say, we are refreshed, let's bounce back. And they think that's wellness. What advice, solid advice, would you give for leaders to embed wellness into the culture such that it's not an afterthought? It's not, 10 people have quit, let's start thinking about wellness, or let's get a therapist to speak to our people. How do we do it as culture such that it's there from day one to the last day when I'm leaving? Still, my psychological safety net is still there. Yeah, if I can start with Anja.
Okay. I think it must be a continuous process, and the most important thing is the attitude of the leader. So being really interested in what's going on in your team, and you have to find the space to talk about that and to really ask questions and listen closely, because I observed many leaders who ask questions, but then they didn't listen anymore. So this is important, and then you find out what's the real need of your team. And maybe it's not the pizza, and maybe it's not the party in the evening, and maybe it's not the day at the training somewhere in a nice, very posh place, but maybe it's just more time in the team meeting to express themselves, whatever. So it can be something totally different that creates well-being, and the leader has never thought about it. So it's really about being interested, staying interested, and also being a role model. So leaders are now machines. They also have emotions and feelings, and they should show it, and they should stay tangible for the team.
Yeah, well-being is not an activity that you schedule.
It's more an attitude of the leader, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Freeman.
Yeah, I believe that leaders who are able to exhibit empathy will naturally create a culture of psychological safety, and as a result, build the foundations of wellness in a company. And so the way that empathy begins to manifest is first for yourself. A manager has to empathize with where they maybe need to improve. They need to empathize with their own shortcomings. They need to give themselves some grace, forgive themselves for maybe things that they wish they had done better, so that they're not harboring their own resentments for themselves. When they do, that starts to unlock empathy for the next layer, which is the customers, the people that they're serving. And so when you then have the empathy for the customer, you start to learn things from them. You start to understand what they really need. As a result, then you start to get to the third layer, which is empathy for the team. And the ability to have empathy for the team then is where wellness becomes embedded across the entire culture of a company. It is generally a top-down approach in terms of being able to truly empathize across the entire company for the people who are making the company possible, and that is the people, that is the team. When that starts to take root, you start to see creativity flourish. You start to see people bringing their whole selves to work. You start to see people giving creative solutions and ideas early on. You start to see them raising the problems that they really need to raise so that they don't become huge problems later. If you start to see that bedrock of creativity, then you start to experience real innovation. And some of the most innovative companies on the planet have prioritized wellness of their people, because it is that empathy of someone feeling respected, feeling safe, and bringing their whole self to work that leads to the creative innovation that has driven huge economies forward and huge companies forward. And so to me, it all comes back to empathy. And if the leaders have empathy, first for themselves, the rest follows.
All right. Thank you very much. I have a lot of questions, but I think our time allows us this much. I've been very happy to host both of you. Freeman, executive leadership coach, and Anja, coach, consultant, and trainer. You can actually catch Anja later on at Strathmore Business School, giving or facilitating a conversation on organizational and team leadership. It's a masterclass leading by diverse teams with purpose. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's happening on 16th and 17th Thursday and Friday, October. I hope you do enjoy if you make it there, and do tell us what you learn. Freeman, you can catch him everywhere.
Feel free to go to freemanwhite.co and you can sign up for my newsletter, which is where I share my own podcast, which is interviews with amazing people, unlikely leaders, heroes in their own community. And so feel free to listen in.
All right. And my name is Richard Okenye. I've been excited to have this conversation. Remember, at KOFISI, we also take care of wellness. If you're a non-KOFISI member listening, this is where we have designed spaces that move with you, support your workday, create moments for pause and recharge. So join us for all the events, conversations, and resources that are placing wellness at the heart of the way we work and the way we take care of your work. See you and listen the next podcast.